Hello and welcome to Let's Talk About It. This is your host, Taylor, and I hope you are all staying healthy and thriving as best as you can in these quarantine times. I am very excited to share this episode with you all. I had 2 separate phone calls that were too hot to handle. I can't help myself but be a little cheesy here. I got to speak with 2 people that really stuck out to me on the new Netflix show, Too Hot to Handle. I will tell you that this episode does include spoilers, so if you have not finished the season, definitely go ahead and do that unless you don't care and you're fine to have things be a little bit spoiled. So the whole premise of this show, if you don't have any interest in watching or just haven't watched yet, the premise of Too Hot to Handle is that they get a bunch of these sexy singles to go date each other on a beach, but then when they get there, they find out that they're not just there to actually have fun and hook up with each other as sexy young singles, but that it's a retreat actually to, focus on creating deeper emotional connection, void of all sexual activity and interaction. I have a lot of feelings about this, as I'm sure you can all imagine. So this show meant that they were not able to kiss, they were not able to touch, and they were not able to masturbate. And at the end of this, there was $100,000 prize money. And if you were to kiss, that would take away $3,000. If you were to have sex, I believe that was $20,000. I don't remember. But basically, if you engaged in any kind of sexual activity, that you would lose prize money for the whole group. So it brought up some interesting group dynamics, but the whole concept I do struggle with a little bit here because I want to be very clear to all of you listeners that you can very, very well have a emotional connection with someone that you are just having sex with. That's okay if you are in a casual relationship and enjoying sex that way. I think the point of why one would go to the length of not engaging in any kind of sexual activity whatsoever in order to produce a deeper emotional connection is when you are having that sex that is meaningless. Now, sometimes that's just what you want. Sometimes you just want a release, and that's okay. I don't want anyone listening to feel shameful if they just intentionally needed a release and sought it out and fulfilled it, and that was it for them. That's totally okay. I struggle with wanting this show to be sex positive and struggling with the fact that some parts of it might not be. But for me, my biggest hang up on all of this was the masturbation piece, because I think it's very important to maintain that sexual relationship with yourself, and that by doing so, you can then show up in a more fulfilled, whole way, emotionally with someone else. So just something to keep in mind as I go through these interviews, both with Kelz and with Matthew. And again, just to check yourself, maybe during the show, maybe while listening to this episode, as to what being sex positive means to you, as to what engaging in sexual activity with someone else means for you. How intentional are you in your sexual interactions? Granted, we're living in different times, so maybe this is something to reflect on from the past, but also to ask yourself what your sexual relationship is with yourself. What is that like? Are you checking in with yourself? Are you avoiding yourself? Are you neglecting yourself? Are you scared of yourself? The piece of this that I thought was most interesting and also not very surprising was that the men on the show were visibly surprised and shocked and frustrated at the inability to masturbate for this month. But the women were more just kind of like, oh, what? But I wanted to lick his body. So I think that just kind of, again, shows how female sexuality has actually been repressed. While we've been hypersexualized, we still are shamed for our sexuality. So having that an intense, deep, emotional, sexual connection within ourselves hasn't been something that's been super encouraged for us. So definitely if I was on that show, I would have fought that piece. But regardless, the show definitely brings up some conversations, some topics to discuss around hookup culture, around what it means to develop a deeper emotional connection with someone, how we go about doing that, how we're using sex in our lives, right? Are we using sex as a way to avoid being emotionally vulnerable with someone? Although, if I'm being honest with you all, sharing your bodies, being fully naked and exposed, allowing someone else to enter your body, entering someone else's body, exchanging fluids, those are all real vulnerable things to be doing. And for whatever reason, we think that it's easier to do, to be vulnerable in that way. But in doing so, we often shut off the emotional part of us that actually allows us to be present in that engagement. So yeah, a lot of things to think about with this show. I want to introduce to our first guest. The first guest that I'm going to be speaking with is Kelz, and he was born in Austria. He's the eldest of 8 children. He moved to the UK at age 13, and he's a senior recruitment consultant based in London. He's very much an alpha male who's used to getting what he wants, and that shows through on the show. He has a tattoo of a lion on his arm, and he played the role of the accountant on the show. He did not engage in any kind of romantic or sexual relationship with anyone, and really stuck to his guns on that. And a friendly reminder before we get into these interviews, because we are going to be talking about sex and we're going to be talking about masturbation, that y'all can get a friendly little discount over at WeVibe. So I have shared several times on my Instagram my favorite vibrators, WeVibe. They've got amazing toys over there. You can get 20% off with code Taylor20. So if after listening to this episode, you're like, yeah, no, I do want to masturbate. I do want to explore some different avenues here. Definitely check them out. WeVibe.com. That's WeVibe, and use code Taylor20. Get yourself a discount. I know that it's an investment when you order these toys. They do have some on sale, so definitely check those out. My favorite that I'll recommend is the Melt. Love the Melt. Definitely, if I'm ever going back on any kind of reality TV show, the Melt is going with me. But apparently not on this show. But anyway, I just want to give a friendly reminder to those of you who are interested to check out the vibrators there and use that code Taylor20, and keep that in mind and share it with your friends, because we could all use some good vibes, if you know what I mean. All right. Without any further ado, I guess we should get into this. And I hope you all enjoy this conversation I had with Kelz. He was fantastic to chat with, and I wish we could have had more time, but very thankful and happy for the time that we did have. And after we chat with Kelz, we will then chat with Matthew. So let's talk about it. All right, so welcome, Kelz, to the show. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me tonight, because you're in the UK, so it's nighttime there, right?
Yeah, that's right. Thanks for having me. It's around 6:30, 6:40.
Okay, wow, yeah. Well, I'm glad we were able to make this work. So you were just recently on the Netflix show Too Hot to Handle, and you definitely stood out to me on there as being the accountant, partially because I was like, that would be me. Like, I would definitely be like, maybe not the actual accountant, because I'm not the best at numbers, but maybe like the accountant's assistant. Love that you took on that role. Have a lot of questions just about the show, but also about you, and was hoping maybe to kind of start off that you could share with us a little bit about what your dating life was like pre-show.
Okay. My dating life was pretty much short, not really existing. I don't really have anyone that I was seeing for a long period of time. Mm-hmm. I've had like one girlfriend like 3 years ago. I've only had one girlfriend, and we were together for like a year and a half / 2 years. And after that, even before that, I just never really bothered getting to know you. I think because I'm very picky, my bar is quite high, so I always tend to find faults into something. So I just never really involved in it for too long.
Yeah. Yeah. And on the show, it did seem like everyone that was casted was just used to having these really short flings and that their relationships were predominantly sexual based. And I couldn't tell if that was an exaggeration or if that was real. But for you, you're saying that that was pretty accurate.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. I think no one really, everyone's a hunter, isn't it? You know, we just hook up, have fun, don't really think beyond, you know, long term for me was 4 weeks until I went to the retreat, to be honest. So I've not really found anything else since then. Everyone was on the same boat. So everyone was pretty much excited to be at a retreat and just have fun with each other, really. Yeah,
where you basically thought you'd be going to, this was in Mexico, right? Not an island. It was Mexico?
No, Mexico.
Yeah,
beautiful Mexico.
You basically thought you were going to be going to Mexico with all these hot chicks and just be able to like go after whoever you wanted and just have like a sex-filled vacation.
Yes, sir. On the beach, in bikinis. Love it. What more can you ask for?
Yeah. And your reaction, I didn't post a lot about the show on social media, but I did post a story of everyone's reaction when Lana, the lamp thing, I don't even know what you call it. She was like this little device that gave you all the rules. She was kind of like your version of The Bachelor's Chris Harrison. And when she came on and shared with you the rules that you were not to be able to engage in any kind of sexual activity, but especially like masturbation. And your reaction literally killed me. You were like, oh,
plot twist.
Yes. And I don't know if it was specifically to the masturbation part, but that was when they showed your reaction. So I'm curious, like, what was actually going through your head, like when you were informed of these rules?
You know what? It was, first it was like, okay, no sex, no kissing, no sex, no nothing. And then I was like, okay, cool. And then they were like, I can do it. And then they were like, no masturbation. I was like, okay, you lot are really testing us. Like it was a different concept, right? Because first of all, I think most of my reaction was pretty much because I've never experienced something like this, right? I was expecting to have fun, be in the sun. I saw these girls. I was already counting in my head who I'm going to go after. And then suddenly they changed all that. And I was just like, shit, I should have made a chance when we were all by the fire, dancing, then drinking. Do you know what I mean? It was literally that. But But I wasn't expecting that. It takes a lot to surprise me. And that was definitely one of those things.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I was surprised. I think there was only one quote unquote hookup of Rhonda and Sharon kissing before the rules were told, before you guys were informed of what the rules were. Well, actually, no, because you guys played that game, but you didn't kiss anyone in that game.
No, didn't.
Yeah.
I was trying to be a gentleman and play it cool. You know what I mean? It takes time. I don't pound straight away. You know, if you're watching the lion and the animal kingdom, the lion will look at the prey for a little bit, doesn't make sense, and then find out which one they're going to pounce on.
Yeah.
If not, if he starts running at the herd, everyone starts running away. You don't want that. You got to be smart about these things.
Very true. I was going to ask about the lion because in your kind of intro video, you had pulled up like your tattoo of a lion, and obviously taking on more of like an alpha role on the show, and I imagine just in your life in general. But that's interesting. The analogy here of like the hunt in dating. Has there been a transition for you in dating post-show? Like if that's still your mindset of this hunt? Yeah,
absolutely. I think after the retreat, you kind of think about things. I'm always a thinker, right? But going a whole 4 weeks without anything kind of makes you think a lot more, especially when there's no social media. There's no girls in bikinis coming up on your feeds. There's no swiping. There's no nothing. So you haven't got any of that distraction, right? You haven't got people calling you. So you kind of spend time reflecting and enjoying conversations with people. So now I think the hunt is a lot more different, where I would see a girl, I'd talk to her, for example, right? And normally you think, okay, get a Kelz. But in my head, I can already replay the hunt in my head. I can already fast forward to us kissing, us having sex in my head while we're talking. Say you and me are talking, right? Already I'm fast forwarding, okay, kissing, what sex would look like. And then, okay, cool, I'm done it. I've done it in my head. So now I'm calm and relaxed. I can talk to you. And there's no need to like do it now because I'm like, I've already done it in my head. And imagination is the most powerful thing in the world, right?
Yeah.
If you can control that, then you would never be able to read me. You won't be able to think like this guy wants to pounce me because I'm always chilled. So it'll be like, yeah, I'm good. So then if whether it takes 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, it's fine. Because I think that's what the thing is, right? Because most guys go on their instinct, the natural instinct. I want to have sex with her. Oh, look at that girl. What? And then once you have it, it's done. That's the same with the hunt. Once I come, usually when I'm with someone, I come to my senses, and I'm just like, this is it now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I guess it depends on what it is that you are looking for, right? It depends if you are just wanting a sexual release or if you are wanting to actually experience that deeper emotional connection. And it sounds like pre-show, your focus on developing that deeper emotional connection wasn't really a priority, that it was more just like, I'm really attracted to this person and I just want to go there. But otherwise, I'm really particular and maybe have some walls up around being vulnerable and like going deeper with people. So let's just like get it on.
You know what? It's definitely something along the lines. I think before what it's normally been is I've always had options, right? So I always could if I wanted to. So it was just a better alternative, right? It was something to do when there's nothing to do rather than I was never available emotionally. My mind never went into that. It was just like, okay, you're attractive. I have an urge. Let's quench that urge and keep it moving. Whereas now, I'm kind of looking for a lot more deeper. Someone that, when you have sex with them, rather than rolling out of bed and putting your jeans on and leaving, you actually want to stay, watch Netflix and chill, have banter, enjoy each other's company, and know what that person is about. I think that's important. I feel like if you can go a whole day just chilling, you doing your thing, for example, and me doing my thing, and we're watching TV and we're just talking. It's not just a sexual thing, but I'm just amazed by your mind and how you keep me on my toes. I think that's amazing, right? Someone you can have sex with and who's also your best friend.
Yeah. I mean, that's the ultimate goal. Just to have a best friend that you also have sex with and want to hang out with all the time. And for you didn't find anyone like that on the show. No,
I think that's why I was interested in Frankie. Obviously, aesthetically, she's beautiful. Let's be honest. But one of my main reasons as to why I didn't really go for her, in the pool, was because I wanted to know if there was more. Right? I mean, she's just broken up with Harry.
Yeah.
And one thing in my head was also like, okay, are you interested in me? Do you just want to corrupt the accountant? Right? Because what's more exciting than spending 20K? Right? What makes a bigger headline? Spending more money with Harry or corrupting the incorruptible accountant? So that's the reason why I didn't want to go for anything. Even though when we were close in the shower, I was like, nah, we'll wait. Because if this is real, after the shower scene, for example, and we wake up in the morning, we'll be able to have conversations, start like normal. I don't know if you saw the scene when we're in the hammock.
Yes.
Where I was actually just talking to her, trying to get to know what she does, whether she enjoys it. That's what I'm about. And I think that's what I wanted to explore, really.
Yeah, that's when she was like, I don't really care about the 100K because I have 300,000 followers on Instagram, so I'll make that anyway.
Yeah, I was like, okay, fair play. Sorry, money bagged.
Yes, but yeah, I could see where, you wanted to give that time to be able to check out that you weren't just like this challenge for her to have achieved, right, of corrupting the accountant. And there was a conversation that you had with Matthew about long-term relationships, about monogamy was brought up. And I wish that, I don't know if you guys did go farther into this conversation or if they just didn't show it, but curious what your relationship is with monogamy.
I definitely believe in monogamy. I mean, that's, I think, one of the reasons why I've been single for so long, because I'm trying to look for someone that ticks all the boxes. I don't believe in settling, right? I mean, we live on a planet with billions of people in the world, and you've got to understand every country has a different culture. So necessarily the person I might want to be with might not be on my street, might not be in my area, might not be on the same tube I get on, but she might be somewhere else. So I don't really feel you should ever lower the bar. In terms of monogamy, that's the reason why it's so important for you to find someone who mentally stimulates you, who you love for their mind, right? So you can look at and be like, I literally just love you. Because it's little things, even the imperfections. Because when the looks fade and everything, and you're old and like in your 70s and 80s, you want to still be next to that one person you can crack jokes up and like have laughs with, have flashbacks with. I think that's just why. Plus, I'm Catholic, so I do genuinely believe in monogamy. I do believe I don't want to have a home with different kids, different mums. I'm kind of old school like that, if that makes sense. Find one person. My granddad, when it was in Africa, obviously back then during those times, having multiple women was seen as a sign of wealth, right? He had 3 wives, like a lot of kids, like 22 kids, but he was rich, so he was able to put everyone through school. So that's how they measured wealth back then. But he died from like high blood pressure. So that kind of answers your question. It's not really, you know, one relationship, one marriage is stressful enough, right? We don't need to multiply that by 3. That's just why it's important to find the right person.
Yeah. So how do you, well, that's interesting. I was going to ask about like religion and how that played a role. I didn't realize that you were Catholic. How has being Catholic, if at all, kind of influenced your relationship with sex?
Yeah. I try to treat it like a gray area. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just one of those things, isn't it? Like, it says you shouldn't have sex before marriage, but you know, I feel like as long as I'm not committing other sins like stealing and killing, I'm all right. I'm okay.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I just try not to think about it. I try to put it in a little box, if that makes sense.
Yes.
But obviously, when it comes to marriage, I think marriage is sacred. That's one thing where, for example, cheating is not something I'll ever condone. Do you know what I mean? Which is why it's so important for me not to settle and be particular with who you want to end up spending the rest of your life with. Isn't it like the most important things, the most stressful things in life are finding a career that you enjoy, securing a house, and then finding the wife that you want to build with. Do you know what I mean? I think that's the most, once you have those 3 things sorted, I think life's pretty much game over, innit? You're winning, right? Level complete.
Yeah. Where do you stand right now with those 3 things in your life?
Great question. Do you know what? I'm okay. Do you know, I haven't found the person I want to marry yet.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I'm in the process of like getting a house. But do you know what's important? You know what I've noticed in life is the process. Because the things I know now, and I spend a lot of time on my own, which is amazing because I know what I'm like. I get to know me a lot more, you know, and because of that, I know what I'm compatible with. Do you know what I mean? So now when I'm dating someone or talking to someone, I know the right questions to ask. I know the right tendencies to look at for me to know whether that's compatible with me or not. And I think that's what's important before you go into a relationship, that you know who you are. Do you know what I mean? That I think the accountant, I knew who I was. I knew what's important to me and I knew what my role was. So if you know that, it doesn't matter what temptation or what any person that comes in, you still stick to you because you know you. Because you don't need someone else to, in essence, you know, make up who you are, or you don't need someone else to know, to make, you know, to let you know what you're supposed to be like.
Definitely. No, I definitely agree with that. I'm curious what you would say in terms of what it is you are looking for in a partner. And I definitely hear parts of, you know, you have like a high standard and you don't want to settle on things and are kind of looking for like this full package. And one of the things that, you know, I have an interesting relationship with monogamy where I think this concept of this person being everything that we're looking for, right? Feels like a lot of pressure to put on someone and doesn't feel super practical to me that we would find someone that meets 100% of the things that we're looking for. So for me, I look at it as like a 80%, like I'm looking for my 80%, right? Where do you stand on that? Like, do you feel like you will find your 100%? And like, what are those things that would make that person 100% of what it is you're looking for?
No, you know what? I actually agree with you on this. 100%. There is no 100% in someone. I think there's always a mix, and I think you need to be able to understand that. Which is why you want someone that exposes your flaws, and someone that at the same time you love enough to want to change those flaws. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if, for example, say you're quite a stubborn person, right? And I have little patience in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would try to say, let's do this, Taylor. You'd be like, no. Why? You have your own opinion, right? And I would normally, if I was a short-tempered person, I'd be like, forget it, whatever. But the thing is, because I care and because I know this would benefit you, my job in essence would be to learn how to communicate differently in a way that you understand, so that you then after a while start taking me on board, and that way you over time become less and less stubborn. Do you know what I mean? So in essence, you have told me how to communicate. You have taught me how to think outside the box. You have taught me to be more patient and try to find different ways to get to understand you. Because what you have to understand, every person has a different point of view, right? The way you look at and think about things is based on where you grow up, the people you hang around with, and the conditions you're in, right? And my way of thinking is completely different. So I think it's important to have someone that exposes your weakness and makes you a better person. And the same vice versa. Because life is, for me, continuous improvement. So if I'm with someone that either is smarter than me or, better at this, then I'm learning something, which means my life becomes a lot more richer by knowing you. Same vice versa. I want to be able to have something that you would want to. But that's still at the same time, both of us are individually very good on our own, but together become even better. Do you know what I mean? Like that growth process.
Yeah. No, I'm 100% on all the things that you just said. Yes. I think those things are very, very important. And I think that's ultimately the goal, right? Is to have that balance in a relationship. And it's definitely, it was just interesting to see you take on that role on the show of almost in a way kind of leading other people in some ways, I think, to sticking to your values in a way. And I know you're the oldest of 8 children. I'm the oldest of technically like 11 children, but all with different mothers. I don't know if yours is all within the same family.
So, yeah. So I've got me and my sister, and then the rest of my dad.
Okay. Yeah. And
but it's pretty much, there's no difference because I've changed everyone's diapers, done school runs for everyone. It's just one love.
Yeah. So I'm wondering then just kind of what kind of like a part of this alpha role does that stem from being the oldest of 8? And like, I imagine that you would perhaps take on a bit of like a caretaker role.
Yeah, it definitely comes from that. I think it's a mindset that you just start from beginning, right? They say people are alphas, you either have it or you don't, right? And I think it's good to note that it's not just about being the biggest and strongest. That's not what it's about. That's not what an alpha makes. An alpha makes you someone that can understand everyone, know how they think, and still be able to, in a way, move them to certain things. Do you know what I mean? It's easy for me to just be like, no one spend money, but I was never like that, right? I was like, people spend money. I was cool, like, do your thing, like, you need to learn from it. But it's also just about, having an element of caring, having an element of being a natural leader and trying to be able to see the bigger picture. And I think that's one of the things I was able to provide in there. And, we ended up with the prize money, which if it wasn't for me would have been probably non-existent. You know what I mean? I've been like, well done, everyone. You win 0.
Yes. Yes. Did you have any idea going in that there would be like a prize at the end?
No. Do you know what? It's actually weird. I'm glad you brought it up because until Lana came up and said, "Oh, there's a 100K prize fund," I realized, wait, I never really asked if I was getting paid for this. Do you know what I mean? I went past the auditions. I was so excited to be on the show, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what was going on. I just heard Mexico, and I was like, okay, I'm down. And then 100K, I was like, oh yeah, prize money. I was going to do this for free, to be honest.
Yes. That is too funny. Yeah. On Bachelor, we don't get paid, but on Paradise, you get paid like just a daily rate, basically, because people are, leaving their jobs and everything. But that's a good point. Yeah. But yeah, the money piece definitely can kind of change up like just the dating dynamic when you're in it. We have to kind of start wrapping up here, but I guess my last question for you would be around what dating is looking like for you now. I mean, I know we're in times of quarantine and everything, but you had some time between when the show stopped filming to when it's been airing now, and I imagine to when quarantine stuff started. So just of what dating looks like for you now, and especially in quarantine, and kind of where you're at with that.
Do you know what? I'll be honest. After I came out, dating has not really been a focus for me. It's. I just wanted to. I knew this was coming out, in a year from now. So for me, I just wanted to make sure I was mentally ready for it, mentally ready for the exposure. Mature enough to handle it and to communicate effectively. I think that was important for me from the get-go. Yeah. And I didn't really want to get into anything or with anyone serious. So what I kind of did was, had a lot of conversations with people, had relations with people, nothing physical necessarily, but just, in a way, trying to practice the things I learned in the retreat, trying to start having female friends. That's something I've never really had much in the past, right? I've never really had a female friend. I always thought like the only way I can have a female friend is if she's not good looking. So that way I never have to think about, having sex with her. But I'm able to now see, women for the thing, not that I wasn't able to before, but see someone for what they are, see their personality, see their good traits, see everything behind them that makes them them and makes me want to have them in my life in a non-sexual capacity, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's what it's been like. I mean, right now we're obviously in quarantine. A lot is going on. A lot of people are suffering, which is obviously sad times for all of us. I think the only thing I would have probably done in this time right now, which I've been doing, is just focusing on myself. And this is a time to learn something new. This is a time to focus on yourself. If it's, reading you want to do, if it's more fitness and activity you want to do, if it's like, if I want to learn how to paint, that's something you can start doing.
I got a ukulele. I've been learning how to play the ukulele.
You see? And it's all about changing negatives into positives, right? And then coming out of this quarantine more developed than you did coming in. I think for me, that would be a win to take out of this sad situation we're in at the moment.
Yeah. And kind of what you did on the show as well. I mean, you had a difficult situation there and definitely tried to see it as an opportunity for growth and as an opportunity to challenge yourself. And I think all of us right now are finding a lot of ways where quarantine is challenging us and ways that we can kind of focus on our personal growth. The last question, just based on what you just said, though, about getting yourself mentally right, was therapy ever a part of that process for you between the show and now, or just ever?
I've always wanted to do therapy. Just because I'm a thinker, I like to think. And I've always wanted to know what it's like to be able to just vomit all your thoughts to someone that just helps put it together for you. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Create order in that mess. And that's the reason I'm quite interested in that. And that's something definitely I'm going to, look into. Just not because I don't think therapy means there's something wrong with you, right? No. I think it's good to be able to have someone tell you more about your thoughts or provide insight. I think everyone in the essence has therapy with someone, right? It could be either your loved one, it could be your friend, it could be, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whoever it is. In essence, whenever you talk to them about a problem, I think that is a form of therapy, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely, just based on how you communicate and talk, I feel like you would get a lot out of it. I'm a therapist, so that's where my head is going. But thank you so much for being vulnerable and for sharing a bit about your story, both on the show and just in your life in general. Could you just tell us a little bit about kind of where people could find you, and if you have anything exciting that you want to share, maybe that's coming up for you?
Yeah, sure. Look, my socials on Instagram @Kelz Dyke. Talk about it, find me, #the accountant. But I'm going to be talking a lot more about stuff like you and me are having, like deeper conversations about relationships and stuff like that. And I think that's quite important to share an insight on that. Yeah. So hit me up, guys, or tweet me.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
All right. I hope you were able to learn a little something from that conversation with Kelz. He was great to talk to, and wish him the best of luck in all of this adventure. And now kind of to move forward with our next guest, we're going to be chatting with Matthew, who kind of took on the role of the Jesus helper on the show. Matthew also did not engage in any kind of sexual or romantic relationship or activities on the show, and stood out to me just in the way that he very much came in there with his own personality and stayed true to that in terms of his style and everything. Matthew is actually from Colorado, and he is... I mean, I didn't know this when we started recording, so I learned some things, but he was actually on America's Next Top Model, and he very much likes to dig deep into conversation, very much has learned a lot through his experiences on reality TV, and is a very deep thinker with a spiritual outlook. He also has a book that you guys should check out. It is listed on his Instagram, and I'm very excited for this conversation. So let's talk about it. All right. Welcome, Matthew, to the show. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Yeah. Usually I record for about 50 minutes, but we've got 30 minutes here with you today. And so I want to get kind of right into some of these questions. First, we saw you on Too Hot to Handle. You weren't on the show the entire time, but you definitely made your mark as Jesus on the show.
Yes.
Definitely made your mark. You came in definitely a very unique personality, unique style, swag, definitely stood out amongst the other contestants. And I'm curious just kind of what got you on the show in the first place.
Well, thank you for the compliments, first of all.
Yeah.
I actually was really stuck on coming in wearing a t-shirt. So I'm glad that you appreciated my style. I got grief from it though, for sure. I thought it was funny. The first thing that Sharon, the first words I heard from anybody was, "Is this a religious thing?" It's okay, so this is how that's going to start. Is this a religious thing? So how I got on the show is actually, there's a crazy story to this. I had been contacted by another network for a dating show just a few days prior, and I called I kind of called my big brother Keith Carlos, who won America's Next Top Model the same season I was on. And
you were on America's Next Top Model?
Yeah, I think I placed 6th or 7th in cycle 21.
That's awesome. Clearly, I didn't do my research.
No, it's okay. Actually, there's tweets going around, literally having a photo of me from top Model and then a photo of me from Too Hot to Handle, and people are saying, "Is it just me, or do these people look weirdly similar?" So it's still kind of a secret that it's the same guy. I think it's amusing. But when I was on Top Model, I was 24. It was 5 years ago, so I didn't have as many tattoos. I didn't have long hair. Yeah. So and I hope I didn't age that bad, but I feel like I still look pretty similar. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I called Keith and was like, "Yo, this network hit me up to do a dating show," and I basically told him to I said no, and probably I could have done it more politely, but I just said no.
Yeah.
And so he told me, he was like, "Yo, you gotta, see things through. When opportunities come knocking, at least know what you're saying no to before slamming the door and, slamming the door shut." And the very next morning at 6 a.m., I got a DM about this show. And it's definitely not something that, because they had to be really, really, really secretive and private about it all, because it's a new season and everything. So normally it's not something I would have responded to, but literally I was about to delete the message when I reheard the voice, you got to see things through. And so I did. And then some time went by and I found myself in paradise pretty much. And I couldn't be happier about it, because it was just such a blessing. And it's been truly such an amazing experience. And when you're doing something for the first time in TV, you don't have anything to relate it to.
Yeah.
So you only have the information they give you. You don't know if it's going to be a success. You don't know how the public's going to relate to it, how it's going to be accepted. And just the experience we had, that alone made it worth it. It was so amazing. But then to see the world respond the way it has, it's it's just been awesome.
Yeah. And first, I'm glad that you had such a good experience. It seemed like it was a good experience, but you never know how things are on the other end. It was kind of staged that pre-show dating was just hot sex flings for all the contestants. Was that true for you?
So I think that like ultimately everyone that was there had been damaged in some kind of way. I think it was just like easier to communicate that it was like we kind of threw ourselves in sex wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah.
I would refine it. I'm not disagreeing with that, but I would refine it by saying like each of us had something that touched on romantic relationships that was maybe like a little bit skewed. Like Sharon definitely had trust issues. I had made the comment like maybe I'm not too sure about monogamy. It wasn't necessarily like we were all whores. I don't think that was at all the case. But I do think that like there was something that was prohibiting us from building deep and meaningful romantic relationships. And obviously if you have a hard time having a romantic relationship, you still have physical needs. So you're probably more likely to have sex without being in a relationship and stuff like that.
Yeah.
To answer your question directly for me, I'm a super sexual person, but I'm also extremely picky. So just because I'm horny doesn't mean I'm having sex. Like, yes, I love sex a lot, but I'm not sleeping around. I never really have been that way.
Yeah.
I hope that answered your question.
No, it did, because I found a few things interesting on this point. One, there was a moment where I think this was the first episode and you were sitting down with Kelz and you guys were talking about long-term relationships. You brought up monogamy. Chloe walked by and you gave her a compliment where then you were kind of like, yeah, she's kind of like the type I would go for.
Right.
But then you never really went for her. And so I did pick up this sense that, like, yes, you can be horny, you have this sense of attraction to people, but that you don't necessarily just, like, jump on that or lead with that was kind of part of what I took away from that, but was also very pleasantly surprised to have seen the monogamy topic get brought up on the show. And I wish that they would have aired more. I don't know if there was more conversation around that piece, but would love to hear a little bit about just what your experiences were like, maybe pre or post show, around monogamy and dating.
Yeah. So the Chloe thing, she's such a sweetheart and she's got this bubbly personality and like you can't really help but love her. And she makes comments that are a little bit ditzy, but they're also like, wow, that was like so pleasant to just hear someone say something like that.
Yeah. Very, very honest, I think. She's very honest. She's great,
but she's also 21, I believe. And I'm 30. So age is just a number, but also like your age does like in a way represent maturity, and either you're there or you're not. So like, it was kind of one of those things where in person, although physically I'm attracted to her, we just have like a brotherly, sisterly energy. That's just what it is. Yeah. So that answers the Chloe thing. The monogamy thing. So I've had a couple relationships, one of which was for about like 5-6 years. And so, yes, the way that went kind of made me jaded. But as I've gotten older and experienced relationships in different ways, it's kind of like, I think, and this is another thing that I said, I do believe that love exists and I do believe monogamy can work. I just believe it's a lot more rare than most people would like to believe. And so it's not that I'm saying, oh, monogamy is not a way to do it. I don't believe in that. I'm just saying that a lot of times actually the concept and the confinement of the like pressure of a monogamous relationship can oftentimes ruin it. So like if you immediately throw that into the bag of like what comes with me, I feel like you're actually limiting a lot of connection you can make with some amazing people.
Yeah, definitely. What has your experience been feedback-wise around that comment on the show?
I think it's kind of like a very, like what's the term? Like voodoo, kind of like people hate to hear it, kind of shunned concept. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, well, what do you say? Like, even if most of the times people will be looking at me and their eyes will be saying, I'm so glad someone else feels this way, but their mouth will be saying, how could you ever believe that? It's like this, almost like if we weren't taught from a childhood age that like Cinderella had one prince, or like Prince Charming like only gave himself to Cinderella, and it wasn't this basically just this ideology that's been shoved in our faces since we were kids, I think it actually makes a lot more sense to not have that restriction. So it's really interesting because I'm someone who likes to pull reactions out of people.
Yeah.
And I'll say things sometimes just to see what people say or think about it, and I'll digest how their reaction was. But the monogamy thing I like to throw out there because it is really interesting, the conversations that come from it.
Mm-hmm.
People don't want to not believe in love because that's a sad thing to most people. Yeah. But they also like understand that having a not so like this is the way it's got to be mentality can actually be beneficial.
And
what do you think about the monogamy subject?
Well, I was going to say, love can exist outside of monogamy. Just because you're not in a monogamous relationship doesn't mean that you can't have love.
Right.
I very much am in the place of, you know, I've talked about it several times on the podcast and on my Instagram as well, where, you know, I think monogamy can be great for some people. And I think there are parts of it that I'm very much drawn to, and there are parts of it that I think are very healthy. But I think this very all or nothing view of monogamy, and I think this default into monogamy can be very dangerous for us. So the way I approach it in my own life is just a very intentional, like, how do we want to create this relationship? It doesn't have to, neither one of us are going to assume that this is going to be monogamous, but, you know, perhaps there are layers of it that are, and what parts of it do we like? What parts of it do we not like? I think having those conversations and just being open to creating the relationship however works for the two of you is what's important. I don't think, you know, when you brought it up on the show, I was like, oh, like that's kind of ballsy, but also makes a little more sense on this show. Like, I think if on Bachelor, if I were to have been like, well, you know, I don't know if monogamy is for me, that like people would have been very happy with me. Not that they were already, but yeah, it's, I think a good topic to bring up because I think that we do need to have more conversations around it. I'm wondering for you, which parts of it have you had any kind of experience with being in a non-monogamous relationship?
Totally. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it wasn't like, but this is the very tricky part of explaining because people think if it's not a monogamous relationship, it means you're swinging. That's not the way it works. It's just like by saying it's not a monogamous relationship, it means that I never put that restriction on the person and vice versa. I've been in non-monogamous relationships where I did not engage in any sexual action with anyone else, but it was because I actually was turned on so much by the fact that I didn't have those restraints that I never wanted to cheat on her anyway.
Yeah.
Or it wouldn't even be cheating, but I didn't like no one else interested me because she gave me freedoms and it was the same vice versa.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, so iron sharpens iron, people grow together and then they grow separately. If you've met someone and you're growing together, like it's very easy to mix up spiritual growth and physical growth. And a lot of times they like base the physical growth to the spiritual growth and that can get really sloppy. Also, I think that like ownership is the opposite of love.
Yeah.
And that becomes a very like self-indulging, gratifying concept. And it can become very abusive mentally and physically as well. So like, you know, someone that, I just think that like it requires a very well-rounded, mature, emotionally stable person to understand that like someone else could love you the most and also let you do what you need to grow. It's just like a topic that I feel like a lot of more people should just reflect on, and they could still come to the conclusion that they feel the same way, but opening your mind to just thinking of the possibility can actually make you learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree with everything you just said. And I do think that there's so much power in having that freedom of choice. Like that connection feels so much deeper in some ways than it has in my other monogamous relationships because it's like, you've made this intentional, conscious choice to choose me, and I appreciate that, and like I'm here with you too. It's also this sense of like selflessness, like you said, like when you take away that sense of ownership over that person, it's a very like selfless kind of love, I feel.
Yeah. And the only girls that I've ever had, the only ex-girlfriends that I'm still close with today are the ones that didn't have monogamous restraints. Which is interesting. And since we never put the like taboo concept of other people into the conversation. They're the only girls I know, truthfully, they're past sexually and vice versa. It's because like we didn't make it a bad thing. So like no one felt uncomfortable sharing their truth, which also I think plays a massive part in why those are the ones that I'm still friends with today.
Yeah.
Because now, since they were able to talk to me totally transparently about their exes before me, like now they're totally able, they know that they can talk to me about who they're with now, and I'm going to be the same.
Yeah. See, mine's actually kind of the opposite. But I'm wondering for you, like now going forward after being on the show, like, is a monogamous relationship something that you are looking for? Is a relationship in general something that you're wanting to explore? Or are you just kind of in a phase right now of like self-reflection after the show itself was a lot of self-reflection, I feel like.
Yeah. So I just turned 30 this February, and
happy belated.
Thank you. I was in Mexico. It was great. I'm ready. Like, so it's kind of just an evolved version of what I said. I definitely want to get married. I definitely want to have kids. Like being a father, I think is going to be the most rewarding chapter of my life. I've had my fun. I've sowed my wild oats. And I'm definitely ready to like have that in my life. But by no means is that how I intend on building. Like I will never make monogamy a building block of my relationship ever. So when I'm married, do I expect us to have a monogamous relationship? Absolutely. Or we won't get married. But I'm not ever going to be like, I'm not the kind of guy that gives someone rules. So what I'll do is I'll give you complete freedom and see who you really are. And that's who I can trust you to be when we get married. So the topic of monogamy is not a factor in my marriage, my marital status. Because if I'm not married, it's because it wasn't monogamous. But did I make it that way? No, it either came naturally or not. But I definitely don't want that to ever be like a topic that my wife felt like she couldn't talk to me about.
Yeah, totally. That makes sense. You brought up your seed, and that reminded me of your intro video, your introduction on the show, where you made a statement of wanting to spread your seed to all kinds of different women of different backgrounds. Can you elaborate on where you're at with that?
So, some back information. My older sister is 5'11", and her ex-husband is 6'11", from Haiti, and they have a daughter and twin boys. And the daughter she's a freshman going into being her sophomore in high school, and she's 6 foot. And the twin boys are in 8th grade, and they're like 5'11". So I am already thinking, I don't want my kids to be like, Dad, why aren't we as cool and athletic as our cousins? I'm 6'6". So I just make jokes like, maybe my best bet is to just spread my seed with a bunch of different, ethnicities and sizes, and just like hope that one of them becomes a super athlete like my nephews and niece already are. Like I like to poke at my mom, because she's always like, I can't wait till I can play with your kids and blah, blah, blah. And I'm a grandma with you. And I always say like, well, you're going to have a lot of them, Mom, and they're all going to look different because I'm going to have 100 wives and blah, blah, blah.
But like you'd be present in all those children's lives, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's an expensive method, but
yes, very.
It is. I did say in the episode that I often joke about it. In a perfect world, having like 5 wives with all different like awesome traits and having a bunch of different cool babies that are just like half my genetics running around seems kind of like an awesome idea. But I wouldn't say it's the most realistic.
Yeah, not the most practical.
No.
Yeah.
That would be a reach on the non-monogamous side of things.
Yes. Well, glad to have some background information on that piece.
I have had a lot of actually women
slide in the DM.
Well, gay women that have contacted me asking for the seed because I'm willing to. We're looking for seed, and I didn't really think of that, but I could never, unfortunately, give my seed away like that. I'd have to be in my child's life. I feel like that would complicate things.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I mean, that's definitely an interesting proposal.
Yeah, I was like, I really did not think about that angle when I said that.
The universe is just bringing you all kinds of gifts from this show.
Opportunities, for sure.
Yes. Another topic that was brought up on the show that I have many questions for you on, and we'll see how much time we have to get to some of them. But one of the rules, the whole premise of the show was for you guys to develop these deeper emotional relationships void of sex, because sex was used as this distraction that was preventing you from getting deeper emotionally. Parts of that I strongly disagree with. Parts of it I get. But there was, the show took it to like a deeper level here, where it wasn't just you guys couldn't have sex with each other, but it was that you couldn't masturbate, that you couldn't even experience that sexual energy or sexual release relationship within yourself. Yeah. What was that like for you? Did you actually not masturbate the whole time you were there?
Dude, for real, 100%, I actually did not masturbate. No one did. No one could. I'm telling you, there was no way around it. It was the real deal. Like,
not even like in the toilet room.
No, I wish. I mean, like my thighs were getting stronger from carrying around these heavy nuts all the time. Like shit was backed up. Testosterone was building. Like little things that weren't important or like hard to deal with day one, like day 15 were like, you know, serious. Like who ate the rest of the steak? Like really silly things.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was real. It was definitely real. There was no way around that for sure, which gives girls an advantage because, like, physically, like, biologically, men produce tons of semen daily. Like, it's like peeing or something. Like, it has to come out one way or the other. So I'm actually really surprised that no one had a wet dream. Like, no one had a wet dream because that's how the body naturally filters it out if you're not getting it done yourself. That did not happen, which was actually really surprising. But yeah, no, there was no way around that. As far as the like interaction between cast members go and the no kissing and stuff, yeah, it did seem a bit extreme. But that was also, I think, an element of like what made it so interesting, you know? I don't think that the experience was built to be like a stroll in the park.
Yeah.
So, and then you're also talking about people who have kind of like, I would say, I think every person that was a part of the cast did kind of use the fulfillment of physical gratification as a crutch to not actually explore themselves emotionally.
Yeah.
So that's why they just wanted to remove that element entirely. But like I said on the show, the not jerking off thing did get really tough. Like it was for real. Because like there becomes a point where someone who's not attractive to you like day one becomes looking really good like day 10 because your body is just telling you like, we don't even care who it is anymore. You just got to get this done, man.
Yeah.
Like full-blown conversations between big brain and little brain. There was like a constant argument going on. There was one day where I saw Rhonda's ass because we're sharing locker rooms, and there was a day where like I just like accidentally glimpsed at her butt in like a bikini and had to like put my head in my locker and like take a second to like digest and analyze why I was there because you know you started walking around like this with like blinders. You don't want to look at the girls. I was lucky that I didn't have a romantic relationship, a romantic interest in anyone, because it would have been really tough if that were the case.
Yeah.
I would love to go on season 2, though, if they have one. Bring in a girl that triggers me, and let's see if I can still abide by the rules.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine that would be very, very difficult. As we saw, like even the couples, they didn't really abstain; they still engaged with each other. Has there been like it's so hard because I think relationships develop in so many different ways, and I think sex is a big part of that. So on one hand, I'm like, yeah, no, that makes sense, you know, like hold off a little bit, like get to know each other, but also like you kind of want to know like if something's there, and also like what is wrong with exploring that sexuality. How did that change just for you to not have that sexual relationship with yourself for those 15 days? Like,
I just took it on as like a mental challenge.
Mm-hmm.
I like to be tested. So I basically just immediately, once Lana gave us the news, I just was like, I don't know the rules to this game, like how someone's going to win or not win. I don't know how that's going to look. I don't know if I'm going to have a relationship. I don't know how I'm going to leave this place, but I know for sure that I can control what I do. And I like made the decision immediately. Like, I want to feel good about how I leave this. And so I'm going to like stick by this, and I'm not going to break any rules. Mm-hmm. And it got really, it really did get tough. To the point where I kind of almost took every little thing. I overanalyzed every single thing because I didn't want to get in my own way and like slip up. Mm-hmm. It was kind of like a whoa. When I found out that we couldn't do that with ourselves, that's where I was like, okay, this is going to be tough.
Yeah.
How would you have felt about that?
I would have been able to do it easily because most of my life I didn't masturbate. But
welcome to the club. The grass is greener on this side of the hill, I can tell you, for all of those listening.
Yeah, that's very different today. Like, I think it would be somewhat easy for me to go back to that, but I would want to fight that. Like, I'm very much a rule follower, but when I feel like there's wiggle room there, I like to argue it. And so I would have felt like, yeah, okay, I won't hook up with anyone, but like, you're not going to take away like my sexual relationship with myself. So I feel like I would have felt very pressed, like, to still do that. I think I would have got really creative in terms of like dirty talk. Like, we didn't really see anyone dirty talking, really. Like, I would have asked so many questions about how you do experience sex, what you like, what you don't like, how you do masturbate, if you could be masturbating. Like, I would be asking so many questions around sex, especially knowing that we weren't going to be able to have sex. And we didn't see that. I don't know if that was happening or not, but
that definitely was happening for sure. Okay. There was a lot of serious things. Yeah, there was. That a lot of people were exploring that. For real, we were talking about craziest experiences. But it was, the way that it was presented, I appreciate, because I feel like it made the cast closer in the fact that we do have kind of secrets. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Plus, I think that you should be able to do whatever you want sexually in the world. Like, go crazy, have fun, be a dark horse. It's all good and gravy. You should experience that. Mm-hmm. But I do also think that some stories should be private.
Yeah.
And a few of the ones I heard should probably be private for sure. Let's just put it this way. The cast is not angels. They have had their fun.
Yes. What, if you're comfortable sharing whatever it would be, what would you say has been like your craziest sexual experience? Most out there sexual experience, which you don't have to answer, but since we're on the topic.
So I would say one of the most romantic, fun sexual experiences was on a beach in South Africa in Cape Town called Clifton Second. That was super cool just because it's amazing and beautiful. Yeah. My thing that I really like is doing things in public, but making it private. So like being sneaky, like having fun, and like, it sounds raunchy and over saturated, I'm sure, but like movie theaters is like a thing kids like that kind of thing. Public affection, but sneaky and private. It's like something you share with your person that no one else knows is going on. It's also like risky and kinky. I like that. That's like my sauce.
Yeah. No, that sounds great. That's awesome.
It's cool. I just think it's fun. Like, if you're behind a bar at a party and no one else is behind the bar, and you can like have conversations and she's wearing a skirt, maybe just explore a little bit.
Yeah. I love that. There's a toy. I don't know if you've ever experimented with toys in this realm or not, but there's a wearable clitoral vibrator called the Moxie from WeVibe that I love, and it attaches to your underwear, and then your partner can like control it from an app. So like if you're like out dancing or something, you can have it on and just like send a text to your partner, and then they can start playing with it, and it is like this little secret that you two share.
Or at dinner with your parents.
Yes, or at dinner with your parents.
Done that. It was amazing. The best thing ever.
Yes.
I asked my girlfriend a serious question. like with our parents at dinner, out at dinner, and I would ask her a serious question and turn it on and like watch how well she could explain the question I asked her in front of our parents. So it was the best thing ever. That was so much fun because like I'm learning a lot about her too. Not only am I turning her on, but I'm seeing like how much she can control herself under pressure. Can she still think? I mean, it was like really, I highly recommend that to people for sure.
Goodness, that's torturous. And
after a couple glasses of wine when they're feeling loose, oh man. It could be viewed as like a form of torture, but that is hot.
A little bit of torture there. But hey, sometimes that is pleasurable. So, I mean,
it's kinky. There's something to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're having a personal experience around other people without it even them knowing it's even happening. That's pretty hot.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to go into just a little bit of how you exited on the show. You had not created any kind of romantic connection with someone and decided to leave. Can you share just a little bit of kind of what your thought process was around that? How come you didn't just stay and continue to self-reflect in that environment?
So a lot of the guys would come to me for like advice, or if they were feeling weak or having questions, they'd kind of pull me aside and we'd shoot the shit about how they were feeling and whatever.
You were almost like everyone's therapist. You were like the Jesus, like
kind of, yeah. I helped. So like people would come to me feeling weak. I'd give them advice and kind of just provide another way for them to look at it. It would help. They'd walk away kind of feeling refreshed and stronger, which was such a cool role for me to play. But then there just became a point where I was like, man, is staying helping? Like I could have definitely selfishly stayed and enjoyed the pool and enjoyed the surroundings and like, kept the potential of winning some prize money. But I also was thinking, by doing this, I'm not going to be there for these guys forever. I'm not going to be able to be someone they can like walk up to and kind of plug in and feel all charged up and be okay when they leave. I was like, you know what? I think overall, for my own personal growth journey, like it was really growing stagnant for me, A. And then B, I knew that I was doing more harm to the people around me than good. And I was just like, there was also an element of me getting frustrated at certain people who kind of refused to maybe adopt a new perspective on certain things at that period of time.
I have a feeling I know who you're referring to there, but yeah.
So it just was like, all right, all in all, what is the best move? And although it was super tough because the thing that mattered to me most was that the guys, because I built a really close bond with all of the guys, like every single one. And it was important to me that they knew I wasn't quitting on them, and that they knew why I was leaving. And then obviously that's an incredible experience, and closing the chapter on that is tough, especially when you're making the decision on your own to close that chapter and walk out of like a once in a lifetime experience. It was way tough. I actually held it together pretty well. Like watching it back, I was like, dang, because I remember I was like shaking. It was kind of one of those things where it was like jumping off a cliff, into the water. It's like that nervous feeling. And I was super sad. It was actually way more emotional than they made it seem. And I almost teared up again watching it because, it got real. And no one had any idea that I was even thinking of doing that. So it was just like, in fact, other people had talked to me about like, I'm feeling weak. Like, I don't know if I could keep doing this. Yeah. And I was like, stick it through. Don't quit. And then for me to turn around and say, it's best if I leave. I think that it caught a lot of people off guard. But it meant a lot for me to see, the cast's reactions and what they said in confessional afterwards. Cause obviously I didn't get to see that.
Yeah. No, it was very clear that like you had developed deep relationships with other people there, and that you were a real source of support for the other contestants on the show. You mentioned again, kind of just taking on this like caretaker role in a way. Is that a role that you also fulfill in your everyday life? A role that you identify with, or did that just come out in the experience of the show?
No, I provide people I provide people perspective, like that's usually different than their own. And I'm always willing to talk with someone, and like I love philosophical conversations. So I think I just naturally draw people that want to talk about stuff that matter to them. And I think that's amazing. And I love doing that. I've always been that way. But I also have support systems for me that I go to when I'm feeling weak or unsure about things. Like I'm definitely not some guru. I'm just a guy who like has a different perspective that people usually like to dissect a little bit.
Yeah.
And I got this way because of all of the poor choices I've made in my life. I tell people I'm a professional bad choice maker.
Oh, really?
And yeah, I've definitely learned the hard way in most things. My friends say I'm on my 9th life. I mean, I'm an extremist.
Oh, wow. Now I have 1,000 more questions.
I've definitely gone through it in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And so I am very aware of the implications of a bad choice, which makes me analyze every decision I make, which makes me think deeply about everything I think about, which gives me perspective and blah, 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 blah. And it turns into me being a person that's willing to help other people. Yeah. Because if I can help someone avoid the bad choices I made, then it gives some sort of retribution to the poor choices I've made. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Through all of these poor choices and bad decisions that you've made, has therapy ever been a part of processing that for you?
No. I mean, I guess I've never hired a therapist. Yeah. But I've got friends that I trust, that I communicate to. So like that is therapy in to me, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it did sound like you had a really good like social support system for that. And being a therapist, I always am like, what's therapy like for you? Is that something you do? Is it, something that you're scared of, or something you had a bad experience with, or that you had a good experience with? But that's good to know that you've like reflected on those things and have support to do that with. How was just the experience of going through the show and coming out of it now? I mean, life obviously is a little bit different for everyone here in quarantine, but, in general, coming off of the show, no more poor decision making or...
Oh, gosh, no, listen, I'm not perfect at all. Not at all. I still make a very impressive amount of bad choices on the regular. Yeah. But it's just because, like, the way I look at things is, why would I climb half of Everest? Like, that's just not how my brain works. If I'm going to climb Everest, I'm going to go to the top. I could die, but I'm not going to put my effort there unless I experience it all the way. And I have that perspective on every single thing, including sex, relationships, everything. So like, I don't just mess up a little bit. Like I don't hit a bumper, like a side of the road bumper, and like get back on track. No, I'm going 80. I'm going to crash, or I'm either going to be able to be like, this is why you should never do that. Or I'm going to be like, this is why you should absolutely do that. I'm never going to have this like biased opinion, or I'm not going to have an opinion at all. Yeah. In which case I've now learned it's way easier to just ask other people, should I do this? And listen.
Definitely. Yeah.
Because gosh, the amount of personal heartache I could have avoided by listening earlier in my life. But I guess, so I'm trying to more and more adopt that. Like sometimes I will tell someone something, and then I will literally think to myself, wow, if I could listen to that shit and like abide by my own words, like this would be a lot better.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, everything that you're going through right now, though, of like coming off of the show, like this is like a big experience, and I imagine a lot to process too. Like, how are you helping yourself through this experience?
Jerking off all the time.
I mean, that is helpful. That is helpful.
It is a massive stress reliever. I am surrounded by awesome people. I actually am quarantining with Keith Carlos, who won Top Model. And so he's been through this process before. And so I'm able to relate with him. And if I'm feeling some kind of way, I can talk to him, and he's experienced this. So that helps a lot. As you know, I think it's just kind of like this crazy anxious feeling that just almost never goes away. And especially if you're in tune with energy and like you can feel that. I've tried to explain it to people where it's like, have you ever had someone that that's thinking about you somewhere, and you can like feel that they're thinking about you, and then you get a text message from them and you're like, wow, like the world just confirmed our sixth sense of like ability of feeling someone's energy.
Yeah.
So then imagine that times 100 million magnified worldwide, and everyone that's thinking about you don't know. That's how it feels. It kind of feels like standing in the middle of New York and just like having your eyes closed and headphones on. You still know there's 100 people walking in every direction looking at you, but you can't like make it out. And it's just this really just crazy, anxious, uncertain feeling that you can't address because you don't know what it is, because we don't teach that this exists.
Yeah.
So you have to like spend extra energy, you know, basically protecting your thoughts and your heart and your feeling. Put your phone away, meditate, pray, do you know, work out, whatever it takes. It's almost like you work the opposite. You work the opposite way of what's happening in your life, and you have to like put effort into protecting yourself and protecting your mind. So like, I don't pick up phone calls really ever unless I already know exactly what they want to talk to me about. I'm not going outside and like, I mean, the quarantine actually helps, I think, the cast a lot, because it's like subconsciously creating an avoidance of the extra energy that will come once this thing all breaks open. So yeah, it's just, I think it's a trick. This is something I developed after Top Model because I wasn't in that place, and I like totally went off the deep end. Yeah. So I knew this time around I had to develop basically a new tactic. And
that's when like a lot of those poor decision making came in after Top Model. Yes.
People don't give enough credit to like people like, okay, I think so. I always say the one common denominator between a successful person is being able to have restraint and stay centered in extreme circumstances, because a lot of people don't realize how powerful someone is to make a good choice when they have every choice available.
Yes.
A lot of people make good choices because they're limited on their options of choices. But then like someone who's an A-list celebrity or like a superstar or a president, they can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
So for them to choose the right thing is not just like, like they had two choices and they picked the right thing. It's like they had 1,000 million choices and they picked the one right thing. Like that is that's in itself an accomplishment.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had a million different things open up to me that I could do. And like 90% of the time I chose the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And it was because of just anxiety I wasn't mentally on the level of where I was in my life. It was just, crazy.
Yeah. Well, no, and that makes sense that having that experience has kind of set you up to have more tools in handling it this time around.
Exactly.
I think especially the like protecting yourself piece. I like to say like you're protecting your emotional energy, where like I've used that example many times pre-quarantine, but especially during quarantine of, you know, don't answer the phone if you don't have the emotional energy to have that conversation with that person, that's okay to put yourself first and say, I'm not here right now to like sit in this space with this person. And yeah, the social media piece is huge. This past weekend, I hadn't opened Instagram since Friday afternoon till now, Monday afternoon. And just those few days, it's so rejuvenating and grounding.
For anyone who hasn't done that, you need to try it. Just go like one day without, and the energy that changes within you will be noticeable within one day. Yes. I've gone without a cell phone or internet 3 times in my life for a month.
A whole month?
A whole month. 3 different times.
I've not done a whole month. I've done like 3 days.
2 of those 3 months was the Top Model and
Okay, no. So yeah, I have done that then. Bachelor in Paradise, so.
Was a month, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and like, it's insane the contrast of how it feels to have a phone on you. Like when you first get your phone back, it's like soul sucking.
Yeah.
Like, and like
they specifically tell you, they're like, be very careful when you do open your phone. Like make sure that you're ready to open it, like when you turn it back on. And still, even when you think you're ready, you're really not ready, because then it's just a whole lot.
And even if you don't, like just the weight of it, like you can feel your body's energy being sucked into this thing. It's absolutely wild. I highly recommend. I was just talking to someone about that. I need to like wean off it even more, I think, and get like, it can be intense. Yeah. But I've told people I love, I go, listen, if you want to call me, I want a text message about what you want to talk about first. And then I'll get back to you, and then we can talk when we do. Because, listen, I'm not going to help anyone if I can't help myself first. I call it's being selfishly selfless. And, like, make the selfish decision for you so that you can be your best self for other people. And I think that's another thing that's undervalued.
I love that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm glad that you operate that way and that you can take care of yourself in that way. I super appreciate you taking the time and like to be on virtually here with me to have this conversation.
Now you know how much it means to me. I'm giving you all I have.
Yes. And I very much appreciate it. And I know that a lot of the things that we talked about will be very helpful for listeners to hear. So I appreciate that. Can you share a little bit about just where people can find you, where they can follow you, if you have anything upcoming that you're working on that you want people to keep an eye out for?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for having me before I go on to my stuff. This has been fun. My Instagram is Matthew Stephen Smith, and that's with a PH. And then that's the same across all boards, just at Matthew, MATTHEW, Stephen, STEPHEN Smith. And you can find me there, and I spit some deep stuff sometimes, but mostly it's just my little kid, like my best friend's son. He's like the cutest thing ever. I highly recommend checking out my story. People are going to hate when I don't live with them anymore because they're going to be like, where did this little kid go? And take your beanie off. Show us the little boy. We don't care about you, Matt.
And do you usually go by Matthew or Matt?
Matthew. My father's name is Matt, so I just stuck with Matthew to be different. But I don't take offense if you call me Matt.
Well, thank you, Matthew, for coming on.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming.
Not yet. All right, that does it for today's episode. Thank you so much for making it all the way through and keeping your ears, your hearts, and your minds open. It would mean so much to me if you could take a second or two after listening to this episode to leave a review on iTunes and let me know what you're enjoying about the show. I love reading, what your favorite episodes are, where you guys listen, and definitely feel free to share this with a friend. I mean, part of how we break down the stigmas around these topics is by talking about them, right? And sharing them with more people. So definitely share the podcast. And again, really wanting to include all of you in this podcast. So if you have questions or you want to share a thought or an experience, please send in a voice memo to ask.letstalkaboutit@gmail.com. And I'm really excited to keep having these conversations and breaking down these stigmas. So thank you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll talk to you next time.